Welcome back everyone, and today I'm going to continue my look back at some of NECA's one-off single-carded DC Universe figures. As a reminder, these figures were all released as part of a special tie-in to do with a DVD or Blu-ray release or extended course, whatever it might have been with Warner Brothers. And as such, they often feel a bit incongruous. They kind of sit alone because they don't have any other characters from the particular film that they're from accompanying them. So it's not like you can have or build up a line of specific characters from a specific film. You just get these one-off releases, which is a little bit strange. That said, I'm still very glad to have them because any of these characters in the 7-inch scale from NECA is a good thing. And today, I'm going to be taking a look at the Joker. And specifically, of course, this is Heath Ledger's Joker from The Dark Knight. So starting with the packaging, we can see they've opted for the similar kind of packaging that we saw with the 1978 Superman figure. It is basically just a square box. This is absolutely fine. It's mostly window display where we can see the figure on display there. But it is at least themed around this specific character, which I do appreciate. So we can see obviously it has purple borders. We have the Joker card there, the playing card, and we have the ha scrawled all over the place. And even the name of the Joker has obviously been crayoned in, which I think is really cool. The only thing that looks a little bit odd is actually the bat symbol at the bottom, which just kind of looks a little bit stuck on. But otherwise, this is actually quite nice packaging. And this extends to the inlay as well. If we look at the inlay, I actually love what they've done here with all these different newspaper headlines. And then, of course, we've got that Joker face, again, stenciled in there. I think this looks really, really cool. It's actually probably one of the better inlays I've seen from NECA in a long, long time. If we look at the side panel, there's not an awful lot going on here. This feels like a lot of wasted space. Yes, we do have the stencil of the Joker's face and some of those ha-ha-has, which is quite nice, but it still feels a little bit dark, a little bit bland, and it's not really great when you put it on display on the shelf. It would have been nice if it had an image of the character or of the figure here, and this could have been consistent across the line, so you could have stacked them up on your bookshelf, but hey, this is fine. I have to say, I really like the reverse of this packaging though. In fact, I think this is probably the best of the ones I have in my collection from this sort of special release line. I really love how they've approached this. Again, it's got that sort of newspaper feel. We have the Joker scroll there in crayon, which is cool. But then we have these individual photos as well, which looks like it's kind of like a crime report, a crime scene, something like that. And I think they've done really nice. I love these Polaroids and they're actually individual shots of the figure in different poses. I think it's really, really cool. So I like this. I think this is actually really displayable and looks really good in terms of presentation. First impressions upon opening the figure, well, he certainly looks the part. I think this looks pretty authentic. It definitely resembles the character that we see on screen, which is pretty cool and nicely done. Obviously, we can see there's a fair amount of detail here at first glance. The only thing I would say that's quite striking when you first get him out of the box is that he does feel very stiff. Now, I have mixed feelings about this head sculpt. I actually think the sculpting is really, really good. I think they've actually really caught the likeness of Heath Ledger's Joker pretty much perfectly, actually. I think it's really nicely done. My problem with this figure really is more the paint apps that are applied here. So we can see a different wash running through the hair, so we can see green and some darker parts running through it, which looks really, really good. But I'm less convinced by these weird gold stress marks in the forehead. These are literally in sort of like a gold paint, and it just looks a little bit strange. Now, I think what it's trying to do is emulate the idea of the skin peeping through the makeup, but obviously gold is not the colour to go with here, so it looks a little bit strange and it's a little bit off-putting. It seems a little bit amateurish. Also, the paint apps around the lips, in particular with that Joker smile, seem a little bit sloppy and not quite accurate, and just feels like it just needed a bit more attention here. It hasn't been very carefully applied, and it definitely distracts from the overall aesthetic of the figure. Now, the sculpting of the torso is pretty effective. I think this looks really good. We can see lots of detail, creases in the jacket there, of course in the gloves as well. They've done a nice job of this. We can see, of course, the tie and the waistcoat, and there's lots of different colours here, which is pretty nice. And the one touch that I really, really do like is this metal chain, and that this actually is a different material. It is actually a metal chain, so it gives it a little bit more texture. It's a little bit more visually interesting, which is great. But my one criticism would be the jacket itself, because this is a very hard plastic. It's very inflexible, and it lends this sense of stiffness to the figure that makes it a little bit unfun. Again, the legs and shoes are very nicely sculpted. All those individual grooves on the cords of his trousers there are sculpted in, which is great. And you can see the paint apps are really nicely applied here as well. We can see the purple, we can see a black wash running through it again. It gives us that sense of texture and depth, which is great. And when we look at articulation, we can see he does have a ball joint in the head, which will allow his head to turn from side to side, but it definitely is compromised by the longer hair piece at the back there, so he can certainly nod his head forwards, but he can't really tilt it too far back. Now he does have ball joints in the shoulders, so of course his arms do kick up and out, and actually a pretty healthy distance, which is great. There's a pin swivel at the elbow as well, so that lower arm can spin all the way around, and of course it will hinge to 90 degrees. Be careful though, these joints are pretty stiff, so you have to be very careful with these. Now he does have one of those sort of ball joints in the wrist with that little sort of stick effect that NECA employed at this time, which I'm not a huge fan of. It will allow the hand to rotate all the way around and sort of hinge forwards and backwards a little bit. Now, there is some articulation in the waist, but because of the stiffness of this jacket, I couldn't really get it to work. So I did want to point out that I think there is articulation here, but it's mostly redundant and not very functional. He does have ball joints in the hips, of course, the legs kick out to the side. There's also another pin swivel at the lower leg, so again, that lower leg will spin all the way around if you want it to. And of course, those legs will kick forwards and backwards, and then the lower leg will, of course, also bend or hinge to 90 degrees. Again, you're going to have a little bit of resistance from that coat there, so be careful with this. And then there is another ball joint in the ankle, so the foot can move forwards, backwards, and from side to side. He also comes with quite a few extra goodies as well, including his pistol, his knife, and his machine gun. I think they've done a really nice job with this pistol. Again, we can see there's actually two tones. We can see that metallic silver paint at the top there, which is quite cool. It's quite an interesting sculpt as well, which I really like. But most importantly, it fits really solidly in his grip. His finger can go onto the trigger there, and this looks really, really good. It looks into scale, and it looks very nice. So I think they've done a really good job with this one. The knife, on the other hand, is less successful because, as you can see, his other hand is quite open, and when you put the knife in it, you're really relying on gravity to hold it in place because, of course, this is not a tight grip at all. But that said, it still works for the most part and looks pretty good. Now the knife obviously is fairly basic, there's not an awful lot of detail on here, but there are two colours, which is something I suppose. But yeah, there's a tendency for it to slip out of his grip, but if you position it carefully, it actually does look the part, so it's actually more successful than you might think, but something to be cautious of. Obviously he can't grip it super tightly. And then we have the machine gun, which I actually think is probably my personal favourite of this line of accessories that he's got here. I think it looks the best. He can hold it with both hands. It does take a bit of perseverance to be able to get him into a position where it looks natural, and it all depends on the angle. So this looks pretty good here. There is a tendency for the lower clip to want to sort of like come away, so it does slot back into place though, so just something to be aware of. But again, the sculpting is quite nice, and we can see two different modes of paint on it, which is good. And as I said, it will fit into his grip fairly snugly, which is great for his trigger finger there, and his other hand can just about grip the bottom of the clip there. So that's pretty good, and all in all, I think this is a pretty good looking accessory to put with this figure when he's on display. As I said, these figures tend to stand alone, but they did release a Batman Begins figure, which is the closest in universe the comparison you can draw between these two. So here they are stood next to each other if you want a scale comparison, see how they look against each other, and it looks pretty good, I have to say. And in some ways, this is a bit of a sneak peek, because next week I will be taking a look at this Batman Begins figure from NECA. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a like, and remember to subscribe, as there'll be plenty more videos soon.